Welcome, everybody, to Regeneration Nation. We are back with another episode, another podcast with your hosts, Cesar Diaz and Alex. We have a juicy one here today. It's the day after Donald Trump's inauguration. A lot of events happening in the world. We're in the midst of a deep freeze here in Toronto in January. Very interesting. Sharing a lot of food, sharing a lot of thoughts, a lot of plans about 2025. And we're going to be talking a lot about Canada in the winter and farming and importing food and where our food comes from in the winter. Really excited to get into this.
Yeah, definitely a lot to talk about. The Donald Trump inauguration is really important because of specifically tariffs that are looming on our country. 25% tariff increase to, let's say, all of Canada, all imports, or in either direction is pretty much catastrophic. So we would essentially be plunged into a recession. And then, that could be detrimental to our country, to our economy. It would make our dollar plunge. And if that were to happen, then our dollar's even weaker with the matching taxation levels that the current government has basically allowed for our country to get into a really high taxation rate. And especially targeting the carbon tax, right? Which is kind of all married together with the cost of goods and the cost of COGS, or cost of goods sold, and what our produce costs. And so the carbon is almost a tax that when you're trying to tax it, you're going to tax the farmers, the people who are transporting the produce into the country. And we already know that there's already a really strained distribution center. Like, we're going to discuss kind of some really important key things about importing produce into Canada, which is really fundamental for us to eat in the winter. We can't grow a lot of food in Canada, right? A lot of people know us as we have pet penguins and we have igloos, as we live in igloos because it's so cold here. 5 months of the year guaranteed it's going to be so cold that we can't grow anything, maybe even up to the 6th month. So we only really have 6 months to grow a lot of food. The last thing we're going to need is, even getting any tariffs from America would be a big problem, but certainly we want to avoid that. So we're going to talk about the hypotheticals in the best case scenario, because I think that, Canada and America cannot separate the relationship that they have regardless. So I think that it's just a matter of, Canada doing the right thing. And I think Canada's going to more of a conservative way. And I think that's the kind of alignment with Trump. And we can really save agriculture as a sector. And that's kind of what we want to get into a little bit today, and how we can, develop our own systems here in the country.
Yeah, so Caesar is a regenerative farmer, and obviously it's January right now. And so the farming, I think we can overview what farming in Ontario is like during the January months, and what is farming like in the winter. Where can Canadians get good quality produce in the winter, I think, is the question. Produce that is not imported, produce that is local and organic. What are our options here, and where are we getting this produce from?
Yeah, we're relying again on, if you are buying organic food, you're buying it from typically big box, like Loblaws, Superstore. A Canadian big box store is kind of the way to go, in the sense of, if you're going to support a big company, Loblaws is going to have the most competitive pricing on organic food because they're going to be the biggest purchaser. So when you're looking for organics, at least you can get that certified organic label, which gives you a non-pesticide kind of relief. There's no pesticides. There might be organic pesticides, but then you definitely are getting a monoculture crop. So if it's grown organically, it's still a monoculture being grown in another country. And essentially you're propping up the business in another country of an organic vegetable or an organic fruit, which is grown organically, and they don't use pesticides there, but they qualify all organic fruits and veggies through an organic certification process. Yeah, so we're not an organic farm that way. We don't have a stamp that says that our farm is organic or not, but we don't use any pesticides naturally.
And now there's the new certified regenerative organic label, the CRA label, which is coming out. And we discussed that in a short that we released on regenerative clothing that we had got, and our matching shirts that we had got. But that is something that at least the organic is not being used in pesticides, but obviously not coming locally. They're being picked early. You're not getting them at the proper growth cycle. You're not getting the proper flavor, the proper nutrients. That's really what we're facing in Canada. What is the outlook on greenhouses in Canada? you just built your own greenhouse this past summer, which is very exciting.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different perspectives on it. I have a small greenhouse, which is just a small nursery greenhouse that's going to be for my garden, a part of my educational experiential garden. But I also have a 30 by 100, a larger scale commercial greenhouse. I'm going to be setting that one up in this spring. And with that said, it's, I think that it's promising in small localities to have greenhouses like that, having many of those greenhouses and people that know how to operate them. That is in itself job creation for the economy, because greenhouses are producers themselves, but then they have their own footprint. They have a carbon footprint that we have to consider, right? When you're growing commercially and then you start growing into the monoculture systems to provide a food product, because if it's a tomato, if it's lettuce, if it's whatever crop you're growing, it becomes a product.
Yeah.
When you're turning a vegetable into a product, you commoditize it, and so then it's now in the market, actively being charged at market price, which is fine. But at the same time, I drew a few numbers there. I was using AI. I was using a bit of AI chat GPT and stuff just to find some figures on greenhouses, and we need something like, it's 10 million acres worth of greenhouses in order to feed our country. Right. And in order to power that many greenhouses, right, there's a footprint, there's an energy requirement. Right. And so when we're a country that's rich in energy, so we have the potential to be, a powerhouse in energy. In order to feed ourselves, we need energy. And that's the energy expenditure that's really, really expensive. That is what you outweigh right now, which would be replaced. We would replace the crazy distribution systems with more energy production. And when you have that energy production to distribution ratio switched up, we're distributing less, we're importing it less, we're taking more from Canadian providers, and we're picking less from Mexican and American providers. But now we're focusing our energy on our own production within our own country, right? Right now, we're outsourcing all our greenhouses to, and maybe not greenhouses, but contracts in another country because they don't need greenhouses. We'll send them to Mexico because the labor might be cheaper. But at the same time, we're divesting Canada and we're investing Mexico on a large scale through big ag, right? And then we know that those systems are just going to impoverish the Mexican people and the lands of those Mexican people for the short-term gain, because even the Mexican people are not going to be able to enjoy this produce, right? And then if they're, just market produce is all sprayed. So all these Mexican guys are just spraying the field with no masks on, kind of, take a random guy off the street and say, hey, you want a job? And then they just spray pesticides all day long.
Yeah.
They make $1 a day. And then we get to enjoy the strawberries that are like picked early and, sprayed heavily and those kinds of things. And then maybe organics. Now you have a little bit of a higher ethics in organics, right? Still monoculture, still growing in crops, still potentially contributing to like slave economies. And then we're divesting again from Canada. But I would say, in terms of where you can find the foods in the winter, it's really hard. It's really hard and really expensive. Even if you go, like I'd say Loblaws is the best place for organics. There's a few organic marts, like, Healthy Foods. There's a few really great spots for like boutique stuff, but it's so much more expensive. Like if you go to those all organic shops
in Whole Foods. Yeah.
Like it's it's much more expensive for organic foods. And then what are you guaranteeing with organics is basically no pesticide, but the growing practices still.
Yeah. Well, the organic manifesto, like I'll do that whole organic manifesto with our students at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. And we just spend almost like half an hour just going through the organic manifesto from the government website as is. And the Canadian organic manifesto is based on the US manifesto largely, and they're not exact equivalents. As far as I know, what you'd see is that there is a minimum standard for livestock. They have to have 40% of their natural life. So if you look in an organic chicken farm, they'll have places to roost. They'll have places to get fresh air. They'll have a free range where they can go outside. They'll have a minimum standard for height. They have a minimum standard for light coming in. And so this is all very good. as opposed to just darkness and like just other in
The conventional method, basically. Yeah.
method, just they become like machine production. Basically, they're not even animals anymore. So you do get all those minimum standards, and there are buffer zones that are like you have to be at least this far out from other pesticides. Going to be a 3-year minimum before you can launch an organic farm on something that has previously
had pesticides on.
That's the rep
right.
for 3 years.
Mm.
So there's all of this. There's a lot of thorough standards,
Mm.
but again, we're still, like you said, in the monoculture.
Yeah, and we're in the cycle of monoculture, and I don't think that there's a divorcing from that right now. Just like how we can't separate ourselves from gas and fossil fuels, we just can't, because agriculture is completely tied to it, and it's completely tied to the distribution of all of it. If we're distributing the vegetables throughout our country, and we live in the biggest landmass, second biggest landmass in the world, it's hard to move anything. Like the people in Nunavut are going to be paying incredible pricing for lettuce, for all vegetables, right? But if we had a stronger greenhouse effect throughout our country, if we helped to pay for the costing of greenhouses in this country, then we would be able to even send greenhouses to none of places like the territories where they really, really are desperate for those greenhouses, right?
Because then you would essentially be taking more energy production. We have the energy in Canada.
We do.
And then we'll have to import less. And obviously importing has its own energy consumption and footprint as well.
Massive carbon footprint.
Yeah.
The carbon footprint for the distribution is like the biggest problem about it, right?
Yes.
Because even, a lot of like, let's say vegan activists will say that cows are the biggest contributor to CO2 in the world. But again, there's, you have places in the world that are blasting water vapor and CO2 at the highest levels. Like a volcano eruption is like an incredible amount of different, and it's different gases too. It's like really hot gases, nitrous oxide, right? Ammonium and different, advanced gases that are more than CO2, that are more detrimental to, let's say, whatever the carbon footprint is a big fight for what it is. There's no sound of any alarms of like the nitrous oxide footprint or like, sulfur oxide or any of these really, really potent gases that are also, I guess, contributing to the overall effect of the human carbon footprint. I think that we got to have a different metric to understanding how cows do play an integral role in the regenerative agriculture cycle, just like the chickens do, and all the animals are actually biological contributors to, regenerating soil. Whereas today, the current monoculture system is based on feeding a lot of people really quickly, but it's not taking into account the health components.
Yes.
And organic it's trying to take into account the chemical component. So it's trying to remove the chemical component, but it's not changing the agricultural practice. Now, with that said, if we're going to change the agricultural practice, what is the evolution to that? And that's the regenerative agriculture way. The permaculture orchards blended with vegetable market gardens, small scale, and then, having some animal systems that are manageable, that helps to create jobs, 5 to 10 people per farm. And then you can bring in, if you need more staff, you bring in more staff during harvest times. It helps to create a kind of one localized farm that can be multiplied by X amount, thousands of farms we would need tens of thousands of those types of farms throughout the major season, and then have greenhouses for the rest of the seasons, right?
Yeah.
That greenhouses can produce year round as well.
Yes.
Right. And that's the magic of those things, right? They're really hot, but if they're large and we are investing in the right type of greenhouse technology, then we're really putting ourselves in a place to grow food year round and to employ people year round and to have a better agricultural sovereignty, so that in the winter we're less reliant on America. That's the whole thing about making Canada great, or being Canada first, is that we're putting our country first by putting the farmers first, right? When we take care of the agriculture of our country, then we're really kind of taking care of the backbone of our country.
Yeah.
And the people.
And if we don't have sovereignty of our own food that we're making in our country, then what do we have sovereignty of?
Yeah.
If you have no production of our own food, then you're going to be ending up as an actual non-independent country.
Yeah, your country is going to always rely on the rest of the powers of the world and the farmers of the rest of the world, and usually impoverished countries in that case, who are not first world democracies or they're struggling themselves as countries. They're in big debts, and their agriculture sectors are being decimated through like heavy tillage practices and monoculture practices. And, like we're taking fields and jungles, chainsaw cutting them down and growing corn and soy. Like we're replacing valuable forest land for corn and soy production, which is like a detriment to the whole planet. But again, we don't want to get too crazy about that. I mean, there's a purpose to silage and corn and soybean, but not at the rate we're growing it. I think it's a bit crazy that we're subsidizing it to the degree. We just found some figures about $2 billion just in corn and soybeans. $2 billion a year is kind of a rough estimate of, what soy and corn subsidies are paid out to farmers in Canada. And if we just developed programs that we invested $2 billion into greenhouse technology, into growing food locally, we would be able to take those subsidies and just replace them, right?
Yes.
Instead of corn and soybeans for feeding cattle and for biofuels, then we could change that around and maybe build greenhouses, water systems, irrigation systems, developing seed banks, having major seed banks, right? Like they haven't considered having a seed bank that collects all heirloom seeds, and we have a vault of all of our seeds. This is really important. Like we as a people need to be considering that we're tied to the food that we eat, and it's tied to the health of the people, right? And we are driving our economy into high debts because we have a healthcare system here who takes care of everybody. And thank God it's the best system in the world. But then if the people are healthier because the food they eat is healthy, then they kind of are going to be less involved. They're not going to have to go to the hospital so much in their life. They're not going to have to see the doctor as much in their life. They won't be as sick as much in their life. The healthier the food, the more whole foods they're eating, and the more access to that food they have, the more knowledge they have of the food too, right? Those are all kind of key things. Being able to cook, knowing how to cook the food.
Knowing how to cook, yep.
That's really important. A lot of people aren't even aware of how to cook with most vegetables.
No, I mean, there's a lot of the fast-paced version of our culture. It really drives us, right? And
totally.
It drives us with so much more opportunity, but it also challenges us to, it's a very complex way of living because we have so many options. Certainly what I find in my life is
too many,
unlimited number of options, and I feel like I can do everything. But then you have to choose. You could be doing videos, you could be doing all of these other things, building multiple businesses, but then where's the time just for cooking, and where's the time for? That's why it is a really big challenge. Is okay, we are going to learn how to live with all this complexity, and we're gonna, part of the interesting and amazing part of the challenge is like, I'm gonna be a top human being in this day and time, is I'm going to learn how to stay healthiest as I possibly can with all this complexity going on in our lives.
Yeah, that complexity, and that's the beauty of it all. It's so complex. But then you can take from it, like, instead of importing 80% of our vegetables and fruits in the winter, let's bring that number down to 40.
Yes.
Right? So then in the winters, we're in a position as Canadians to say, let's go, today we can go out. We can go out and have food at restaurants and support more restaurants in the wintertime, and then do more cooking during the seasons where there's food abundance and the food is ripe, ready to eat from the tree, from the bush, from the vine, from the plant. And that's the key, is like to understand that, when food should be eaten, how whole foods are really key to our gut health and our microbiome health. Eating all of the seasonal herbs in soups, having a taste of all of the seasonality, and even being in the soil through the summer months should be a priority for all humans, right? And if everybody invested a little bit into even just volunteering at farms, it would be much easier for Canadians to have a little bit more sovereignty. We see there are a lot of considerations when it comes to importing produce. So we're importing $10 billion in fresh fruits and vegetables annually. 80% of our fruits and 50% of our vegetables consumed in Canada are imported, and that's the highest dependence in the winter. If we could reduce that, like those numbers there, we would be focusing our energy on investing into Canada, and then our imports from America, US, South America is we're bringing in an incredible amount of blueberries, peaches, cherries, stone fruit from Argentina and Peru, right? An incredible amount. That's like my dad's country, Argentina. Why, we don't need to be doing that. Like we really don't need cherries from Argentina right now, right? So the amount of we're importing that much produce, the fuel cost, the distribution of that, does it really cost? How could it be $10 for a pint of or a pack of cherries from Costco from Argentina, right? There's got to be someone is hiding, somebody, every subsidy is covering the true cost of what the good is.
Yeah. And really it's because of this abundance that we have. I want cherries in January,
Of course.
right? And it's hard. I mean, it's a challenge. It's a good challenge to see how can we go to the local foods and how can we say like, okay, hey guys, this is what we should be eating now. This is what's local produce. There's a great book. I have Hot Detox there, but it was a great book that I found, which was like what, and this goes back to even holistic nutrition, being spiritual with the food that you eat at a given time. Your body, that book, there's Hot Detox there. It's by Julie Daniluk. Amazing. Hot Detox means that during the winter, you shouldn't be having juice cleanses with all those cooling juices from California. The juice cleanse is popular in California and Southern California because it's hot all year round. So that's why you're going on a juice cleanse. She says hot detox because she's a Ukrainian Canadian and Ukraine gets cold in the winter. Toronto gets cold in the winter. And so she said, we should be having soups.
A lot of soup.
That's our hot detox. That's our juice cleanses is soups.
Yeah.
Right. And we should be having root vegetable soups. We should be having bone broth soups. We should be having organic collagen bone broth, organic chicken, regenerative chicken bone broth soup. And then the people who are having those during the winter, then your actual core spiritualness is locked in. You shouldn't be having like salads and carrots and cold things during this. We're literally minus 14, minus 30 with the wind chill today.
Man.
Minus 30. It's like absolutely hilarious. This is not a time to go on a fast.
No.
This is not a time to go on a juice cleanse. Your body needs heat. Your body needs endothermic reactions inside. And spiritually, you need grounding against the cold. When it's super hot outside, our body naturally is like, let's get into cooling. We actually need less food. We need less food for endothermic. We need less fat for insulation. We need less muscle for insulation because muscle and fat are the greatest insulators.
Totally.
That's why I feel so insulated.
Is that it? You're feeling good, eh?
Feeling great.
That's amazing. You're feeling good.
No, but I think so. It's so not only like, this is going to be great for our production and our value in production, but also from the emotional and spiritual and nutritional side of things.
Totally.
Then eating in season locks all of those four things in.
Totally.
And you think about that, like our forefathers, obviously there was a period of time where we're only in this last generation of humans, that we actually have this option. Only our parents and us, the first two generations of humans, and now your son, so the third generation's like finally here. But only the three generations that are currently living on this planet are the three generations who have access to this distribution system.
And it's an incredible, impossible infrastructure that we've created. It's kind of like ants. But I've said this a few times, we're really good at making solutions, but they don't always answer the questions with the right answers, right? It gives us a temporary solution. And that's what we have here, right? It's democracy and capitalism. People might say anything against it, but I think that it's the best thing we have going for ourselves. I mean, look at the way we're living. And this is the best country in the world. I don't think anybody has the privileges that we do to be able to film the content we are, to be able to, express ourselves, our opinions without being censored. Those kinds of things are really key here. The distribution systems of information, the distribution systems of goods to our home, being able to order something from Amazon and it be at our house within a day. And then this is, the first time in history to ever be able to harness technology this way and make information so quickly available to us that, we even take that for granted. So with that said, I think that it's about creating systems, creating ways of improving our agriculture, and year after year investing maybe not the $2 billion in a subsidy, but even if you injected $1 billion into organic regenerative agriculture every single year, we would
What a game changer that would be.
right? Just that alone is a huge help. We're looking at the end of the day here, we're trying to transition from a really costly system that has a huge carbon footprint to reversing that carbon footprint, reversing all the damage from tilling and from overspraying and from, like you say, there's a 3-year rest period, switching back to organics. So you just plant a bunch of cover crops, wait the 3 years, keep spraying biology, keep spreading compost, keep spraying biology, keep spreading compost on those fields. That takes a lot of money and revenue and overhead to rechange those fields back into healthy lands, but it's possible to do that. And then, you allocate X amount of lands to greenhouses, and you allocate X amount of lands to regenerating with using cattle, goats, and sheep. Sheep and cows are the real cattle that we're going to be using for major regeneration. Weeds and kind of invasive plants are going to be dealt with by the goats. The goats are really great at that. And you can teach your sheep and your cows a little bit on that, but they prefer grasses. And, the goats are going to be experts at eating weeds. So when you have a weed problem, you bring in the weed eaters, and you use these systems that are job creators. They create jobs. At the same time, they're creating small economies of scale at a small scale. And, thousands of these small organic regenerative farms, if they're funded by the government, then we're able to do something. We can start investing in infrastructure. We can start creating education systems like what we're trying to do at our farm here with Alex, and over at Strong Play, over with TAC, we're creating farm camp systems where we're teaching children at a young age how to grow food in a garden setting and how to intake that information at a young age. So full immersion at a young age is really key. And then policy support from the government, being able to be supported by the government is key as well. If the government is on board with corn and soybeans, imagine what they would be if you had a strong educational program, farm, a kind of blueprint to follow. This is how we can launch a kind of blueprinted farm system that is kind of scalable on a local level. And here are the things we need, but here's also the education part. That's the key. The knowledge is what people need to be passed down. What our nonos and our grandfathers weren't able to give us, that their parents gave them, was the survival mechanism to grow food and to protect themselves and their families. Like your nono and, my grandmother and grandparents, they all grew their own food.
All of them, yeah. Our grandparents, my English grandparents, grew their own food.
And before that, everyone else did too.
And before that,
they all had gardens in their backyard. So we just need that reversal to start happening. And it's happening. It is happening. So, we're seeing that now. And, I think the world is changing. The world is now, TikTok coming back online, and people are demanding full rights to freedom of speech and freedom of information, right? That's the key here. We want to be able to learn at a faster rate. We want to be able to change things at a faster rate. If this climate change and global warming is the worst thing in the world, then we need to move fast, right? It's like lightning speed. So with lightning speed comes, all of the things that come with, transporting food across the country through one side of the continent to the other, or from parts of the continent of Africa all the way to Canada, because we want a little bit of coffee, a little bit of cacao, right? Something that we got to reconsider and eat more locally, seasonally, like you were saying earlier. That's really the key there, is we need to be more seasonally minded, really focused on the spirit, on the mind, on the body, and using all of our systems here in harmony with nature, in biology, and how we grow food, how we steward the land, how we steward our friendships and relationships with people. All of these things matter in the larger picture. And that's what we're trying to achieve as well with our podcast, to bring community together to learn about these systems and how anybody can contribute, whether it's volunteering at your local farms, spending enough time at, some local small organic regenerative farm is going to teach you more than even some school programming is going to teach you, for life skills, like some real hard life skills that are really beneficial to all Canadians, really.
And that lightning speed will come from the more people who are in that regenerative. We solve so many things with this regenerative movement. We solve so many things.
Totally.
We solve our dependence, we solve our health, we solve our understanding of not only our agricultural systems, but our ecosystems. And we become in tune with our planet, we become in tune with our bodies and our food. get healthier, get more grounded, get more spiritually grounded as well.
Totally.
And then when we regenerate the soils, then that drawdown effect, we have better water cycling, so many benefits from regenerative agriculture. Increased biodiversity, increased cleanliness of water, replenished aquifers.
All biomimicry, basically, mimicking what nature is supposed to do, what nature intended. And that's kind of the hypothetical. How do we replace all of the corn and soybean to a regenerative agriculture system where we are now a major cattle producer? We have an incredible amount of cows that are, instead of we're growing corn and soybean, we're now growing pastures, and the cattle are then going to help to regenerate that. And that's going to take a long kind of transitional period, growing the corn to feed the cattle to growing grass and running cattle through it.
Yes.
I think that that's the key, right? And it takes years to regenerate the soil. So, I think soil, it's really forgiving, but we need to start giving back. And so I think that now with a new mindset in America, especially let's say RFK coming in with Donald Trump, there's going to be some changes there. I think that type of energy can flow into Canada in terms of agriculture and how we're looking at things. And subsidizing biofuels is absolutely crazy. I just don't think we shouldn't be even doing it anymore. I think we got to consider, an alternative fuel at this point, because if we're looking at that as a green fuel, it's not a good thing.
Oh.
We're just spending so much time growing corn and soybean, and we're paying for it. I think we did the figures. We're paying a $2 billion subsidy for corn and soybeans. And imagine this, that a cow can't even eat the corn. So we're paying $2 billion, especially if that's a lost year for farmers, $2 billion to grow a substance that the cows get sick on. They get sick when they eat it. And then we are eating the sick animals after that in a commercial setting. Basically, all the meat is eating the same thing.
Yeah. And we're just trying to eat meat, and we're trying to eat more meat, from a fitness perspective and from a nutritional perspective. We need to have good quality meat, and we have to have good quality meat that's not destroying us, destroying the soil, destroying the earth, right? We need meat. Like, meat is incredibly healing and nutritious for our bodies.
Totally.
We need good quality meat. It's not, you can't be satisfied with just like, so culturally, spiritually, it's very, very hard to be in that vegan space.
Yeah. And just get the nutrients that you need.
So the nutrients,
Yeah.
and the grounding and the spiritual grounding.
Yeah.
It's
They might argue that, vegans might argue that, because there's, the vegan and plant-based perspective is that you can get all the nutrition that you need from vegetables. But the problem is that unless you're getting it from a garden that is using, let's say, a very soil food web approach, they're using all regenerative agriculture approaches. They have the highest nutrient cycling. They have high levels of organic matter in their soils. They're doing all the right things. They are going to get the most nutrient dense foods. Let's say there's Joel Salatin and those farmers that have they've been growing plots forever and they have these really healthy gardens. They might be growing really nutrient dense food, but the foods that you're getting at the grocery store are all, we know now, they're all devoid of most nutrition. By the time they get to the store, there's almost 100% loss in all nutrition. And so really meat is the only thing that can retain that much nutrition. Even if it's low quality meat, it's still going to be the highest quality nutrition out of all the choices.
That's a crazy thing to think about. Because if they've already been picked super early, they're already missing all the nutrients. Then by the time they get to your plate, you're trying to eat all these vegetables and they're so devoid of nutrients that they're not doing anything for you. I mean, they're low calorie. They're going to be providing some
fiber, right?
The fiber is what lasts. But it's crazy, right?
But you're also filtering, again, we're a filter. So our liver, our kidneys are working in conjunction as filters. If we are, let's say, we're just going to go conventional. We're going to be a normal average person that can't afford organic. You're going to go to the store, you're going to buy all whole foods. You're going to buy all sprayed, pesticide-laden vegetables that are devoid of nutrition. You're still cycling the glyphosate through your liver. All those toxins that are neurotoxins, myotoxins, mycotoxins, toxins that come from fungi, mycotoxins, and all of these different types of toxins that are coming from, and parasites that are coming from conventional foods are something to consider that you're filtering through your body. right?
Yeah, yeah.
And how long of compounding do you want to do that before, the 50-year cycle? At 50, all of our, people I know that are getting into their 50s and 60s, that's when all the diseases start to pop up, right? The cancers, the diabetes, or the heavy obesity, heart pressure, all of the, all these things. And then guess the doctors just put them on drugs.
Yeah. They go on
Stat
a nice blend of
the concoction.
the concoction. Yeah.
And it's, taxpayer dollar is paying for those drugs. So in Canada anyways. And so with that said, it's like, instead of feeding medicine and drugs, we should be feeding nutritious food and spending our money on nutritious food, so that over time we have the element where, we know we're taking care of the people through our actions, through saying we're going to grow organic food, highly nutrient dense, regenerative organic food.
Yes.
That's what we need to kind of conceptualize. Not that we're just growing organic food, but that we're growing really nutrient dense food, more than just organic food. Organic food is just, that's kind of now the bottom of the totem pole in terms of
the minimum viable standard, really.
And it's
call it the minimum viable standard.
If
you're not buying it, you're literally buying pesticide-laden food.
Yeah.
That's destroying our planet. At least the organic food is the minimum viable standard. It's the standard at which that farm is not harming the other farms around it. That farm is not harming kids around it. That farm is not harming people that it's being in contact with, because there are strict standards around the pesticides, right?
For sure.
But then you have these agro farms, and it's very interesting to see, because you have the berries. I don't remember what the companies are called off the top of my head, right? But you have a berry company, and right in the aisle, you have the same company selling organic and non-organic pesticides. You have literally the same company that's got organic berries has the non-organic berries right next to it.
Yeah. And then you think, well, if they're growing organic and non-organic,
then what's happening?
If the employees are making $1 a day, do they care that much?
Yeah.
Ethics in terms of how that happens. And, monocultures are usually these massive systems where the employees are usually taken advantage of, because it's all production based. So it's piecework and like weight based. So like, bring me a bushel of tomatoes and then I pay you.
And listen, at the end of the day, I just want to have a pint of raspberries and not be like, okay, now I literally showed our class in holistic nutrition videos on how to de-pesticide your produce.
Yeah.
It's lemon, salt, vinegar. Like, you could do it in a few different ways.
For sure. But they need to have to do all of that.
Come on. Yeah. Humans, it needs to be convenient for us to eat quality.
Yeah. But that's the thing. That's the price of convenience, right? Yeah. So what we're saying is, regenerative agriculture, if you are to use it to reduce import dependence, you're going to gain there's going to be some gains in regenerative agriculture. And, you're looking at many things there. Regenerative agriculture is a mindset shift where it's not really convenient, right? Convenience is not the mindset. It's the opposite. Let's do a lot of really hard stuff. We're going to increase our soil health. That's number one. Using different types of systems, crop rotation, and using cattle. That's going to be key to regenerating the soil, to create a system that sequesters carbon, but also sequesters water. And we retain more water on our land. We're able to grow more food on our land because of that. Create more resilient soils. Regenerative practices create more farms, right? Over time, we can create more and more farm opportunities, more jobs, more technology gets it spread into these farms, and then we remove convenience out of the equation, because I think that's the number one thing. We've been looking to convenience, but by looking for convenience, we're outsourcing that convenience to we're importing the convenience, we're exporting the hard work somewhere else. Somebody else is not conveniently living so that we can conveniently live.
Yeah. And it's just a product of our current society. It's not no one's fault. It's
just the systems that are in place.
Wouldn't this be great?
Solution.
Wouldn't this be great? I kind of want raspberries during January. Yeah, it sounds great. How do we make that happen?
I have a solution.
It's a miracle that we made that happen. It's incredible.
Right.
How the hell?
So there's solutions to all of our answers. Yeah. We have, but is it the right answer? Is it the right answer?
We've given solutions that are miracles in their own right, but are not the right solution for what we need. And
No.
so I think what we've seen is just what we're trying to push is, okay, our parents grew up in one society. Now we've seen a generation of abundance coming from big pharma, big agro, and it's a false abundance because sure, you have it. We want to have sustainable quality abundance, not this false abundance. Is like, sure, we have every vegetable you want, every fruit you want, but there's going to be no nutritional value.
No, and you're gonna pay $6 more for it.
Yeah.
We saw, I think it was a pint of strawberries is $10.99
That pint of strawberries for
at Costco. At Costco,
that doesn't feed me at all.
no, it
That's like
doesn't.
a micro snack for me.
It's a micro snack, and you can eat,
The
you know,
highest luxury.
yeah. But even if you do like eat how I do, I eat pretty much carnivore keto now. I used to be vegan. I eat pretty much carnivore keto. Lots of meat. For breakfast I can eat liver or bacon or steak and eggs. Eggs are great. We want to grow our own eggs so that way we can have the most nutrient dense eggs, most nutrient dense food. Having this type of food, avocados, some berries. We can have milk, raw milk on the carnivore keto diet. That's the key. Next is to get some raw milk, even though it's a hot topic in Canada, of course. But yeah, I think eating really whole foods, eating 2 really big meals a day that are consisting more of meat and maybe a nice soup, collagen, beef broth, beef-based soup in the winter is how you do things. You just change up how much produce you eat in the winter. But we need to have we need to be less reliant on other cattle systems in the world. We're importing an incredible amount from Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, I would say, but wouldn't that be something that's sustainable during the winter? Cattle and livestock?
Well, we need to grow the food to feed them.
We need to grow the food.
We need to grow all of the grass.
It's done through greenhouses.
Well, the thing is, all the grass that you see baled, that is for winter feed. Baled grass,
Even baled dried grass.
that's what we use for winter feed for animals. So that's fine. That's a fine approach. But most cattle are being fed corn. So is the corn.
That's
The guys that are still growing grass and baling it and feeding their cattle grass are still honorably doing the right thing to do, even though it costs more money. They're like, nope, they're long-term farmers. They're like, we're in for the long haul. I'll see my returns in the long term through my meat health, through my customers coming back forever and ever because my food is the healthiest, through the trust that that I've instilled in them because they believe in me and my product, in my hard work, that I'm feeding them quality grass all year round. So it's like I have my pastures for grazing and I have my pastures for rolling hay and having my winter production covered as well. There's definitely ways to do that, right? You can have cattle still grazing in the winter fields. You can have them rotating around still in a rotational grazing situation.
Yeah.
That's a little bit harder in the winters here in Canada. So it's, cattle are definitely tougher in Canada, but it's not something that can't happen. Like you can have winter systems where you're kind of holding your cattle in one zone, especially when it's really cold, and then having paddock systems that you move them to. It's much harder, but it's not impossible. Right? That's the thing. It's not impossible. And if we don't invest in it, we can never create traction to move and expand on the industry. So that's where we as a country need to invest more into cattle, not less. Not say that cattle create pollution, because it's really not the right way of looking at it. When cows are a part of the solution, they create pollution, they create CO2 and greenhouse gases, but they're a part of our solution.
Yeah.
Right? They're part of the answer, not just the solution.
The answer, whether they're a necessity, and then they can regenerate the soil by pastured grazing.
Yeah. And then we can fill in, right? So we have meat, we have beef, we have chicken, we have goats. We can also use greenhouses to house animals in the winter time. Right? Because they have an R rating value. So if we don't know what to do in the winter months with the greenhouses. The idea is we grow year round, but if the cattle need somewhere to go, we can reintegrate, have them pooping inside the greenhouses all winter long. And then we have a manure source come springtime. And that's kind of the Joel Salatin way, is he'll pent up his cows in the wintertime and then they poop in a large place and it's deeply mulched with wood chips. So then what happens is over time they poop. And then in the springtime, they have this massive layer of poop and compost and wood chips that's been sitting there. And then they compost that material further. So they have a source of composting
They have
material,
rich compost.
right? So there's ways to do it where we're using all of our systems and everything is 100% in cycle. We're using every single part of what we do. So I guess some thoughts here. Key crops that Canada could grow to replace those imports are greens, leafy greens, lettuce. Lettuce is the most eaten green out of all.
Yes.
Lettuce, we can grow spinach, kale, even though kale, high oxalates, spinach has high oxalates in it. We can grow broccoli, cauliflower, brassicas grow well into the winter. And then once our winter cycle's dead, we can run animals through those greenhouses, changing that kind of dynamic. And again, there's a lot of problems in Health Canada and how they operate and how they do things. They don't like to use cow manures and animal manures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But again, if those animals were healthy, organic, didn't have pesticides or they didn't have vaccines, they didn't have antibiotics, they weren't themselves ill because they're eating the wrong diet,
and they're inside all the time,
then they would be healthy animals. Their manure would be perfect.
It would be perfect. And that's what's used in the biodynamic and regenerative agriculture.
Organic poop even you got to consider, because if the cows have dewormer in them and these parasitic, parasite killers, then you're going to kill all the nematodes. You're going to kill all of the worms that are in the compost.
In the compost.
So anyway, leafy greens are great. Berries, tomatoes and peppers, root vegetables, legumes, these are all things we can grow inside of greenhouses year round in Canada. And we can easily be creating more jobs just growing greenhouse production. Those are all things that'll help us get by. We can grow eggs, we can grow chickens, we can grow goats, we can grow lamb, we can grow cattle, cows.
Yes.
There's a lot of different options for meat that help to offset the vegetable production. And then there's a lot of benefits to the locally grown food for our community health. This is something we kind of touched on there. Fresher produce, people are eating more nutrient dense food. The nutrients are being retained in the food and people are reaching it, getting it at a faster rate. That's really one of the key things there, right?
Yeah.
People can eat nutrient dense foods right then and there.
Right there. And then our food sovereignty would be incredible. Our food security would be incredible. And I think really everyone just wants this.
Well, I think it strengthens our economy overall.
Yeah.
To be able to produce food, you're going to have a stronger economy. You're going to buy local. You're going to help farmers who are maybe struggling farmers, maybe trying to make ends meet. They might not only sell vegetables, they might sell honey, they might sell charcuterie boards, they might sell all kinds of different goodies. They might be supporting other local farms doing like cooperative stuff, right? So it's really all about, working with creating economies of scale, small ones that eventually can scale into bigger productions to help feed more people, thousands of people within your community.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think this is a great place to kind of finish up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This was a beautiful show. Really hope that you got a lot from this episode. A lot of understanding as Canadians of what happens during the winter months, what can happen, how do we get the best produce, how do we get all of those locally produced, and how does regenerative agriculture play that piece and make that piece of the puzzle with the greenhouses solutions.
We're going to keep talking more. We're going to, keep giving our opinions on where our country does need to go and the direction we think the agriculture industry should go. And we're going to keep posting our journey along the way. So thank you so much for tuning in. And hopefully you guys enjoyed our little chat today, and we'll keep up the content for you guys. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you again next time.
Much love. Wishing you guys abundance, sustainable abundance.